Hi, it's Theo and thank you for joining me. And today we're looking at the best decks to climb to Legend. As always, I'll have at least one deck per class and the deck codes are in the description. Now, let's not waste any time and start with the best deck, or that's at least what it looks like, the Aggro Hunter. And yeah, it's kind of the same as before, though it's no longer running the Bulwark, but it's still running the Solidisper. Yeah, just still a very aggressive deck. It is running Mukla now as well. 3 mana, 5/6. I mean, just good stats, very good in aggressive deck, as well as the Zilix, of course, so he double attack. So just a really annoying minion to deal with. And yeah, I know from my experience, right, if you don't deal with this minion, you probably just lose the game. So yeah, a really strong deck overall. And the second deck we have is the Beast Hunt. And yeah, just like Demon Hunter, this is also a very aggressive deck. And it's all about buffing your beast, or at least with turn 5 Supreme Dynamancy and City Chief Asho. But before that, yeah, it's just a kind of good old aggro deck, right? Just a lot of 1-drops, so you can buff him even with the Raptor. And we also have a lot of ways to fill the board, especially with the Mother Duck and the RC Rampage. This card is so strong, right? Just so often it's a 4 mana 10/10 or even 12/12, and yeah, that wins often games, especially if it sticks around, you buff it and the game is pretty much over. So very good deck to climb very fast. And as the third deck, we have another aggro deck, and yeah, the aggro decks, they seem to be pretty good in climbing this patch. And yeah, this is the Aggro Paladin, and it's also really good at just buffing the board. Of course, we have cards like Flash Shield, Crusader Aura, but yeah, when I face this deck, often what really wins the game is an early Busy Bot, because yeah, buffing all your minions +1/+1, that really makes a big difference, makes it really hard to clear stuff, and just makes it so that your other buffs are also way better, because there's more minions on the board that don't die to AoE. And then yeah, also with Mother Duck, right, Crusader Aura, just a yeah, really strong deck. This can often actually just win on like turn 5, because yeah, if you don't have any early game against this deck, yeah, the game is pretty much over, because this deck snowballs super fast. And as usual, there is a Handbuff Hunter list in this video, and yeah, nothing really changed here. You buff your minions, and then yeah, they become pretty big, and often you win that way. But don't underestimate though, this deck actually has quite a bit of late game, and it's been pretty annoying to deal with sometimes, where you think it's over, but then yeah, Deathfall deals damage. You got the Dynamancy buffing RC Rampage boards, or the Furious Files just hitting you in the face, and then having to clear that. So yeah, don't think the game is quite over yet when you've dealt with 1 or 2 big minions, but yeah, still very strong deck. Then kind of a new deck we have here is the Cliff type Demon Hunt, although it's kind of old, but also kind of new in a weird way. But yeah, this one is running Calypso the Artist, actually, because there's a lot of way to gain tokens. Yeah, this list surprisingly had really good stats, so that's why it's here. And yeah, with the Calypso, what you want to do is ideally get Inquisitor or Mech Warrior right on a full board. And yeah, getting a full board isn't that difficult, because you have cards like the Dangerous Cliffside, of course, although you probably don't want to attack first with this card before you get Inquisitor if you want to play Calypso. But also you have the Fell Hunter into the Blob of Tar, and I mean, that's so annoying to deal with, right? You get Fell Hunter, then Blob of Tar twice, and then those 2 minions summon another 4 minions total. Just a nightmare to get rid of those boards. And then if you can Calypso that board, yeah, that often wins the game. And as always, a Rogue deck is doing well, though finally it looks like Fyrakk Rogue might be slowing down a little bit, but we got the Fyrakk Rogue here, and it's yeah, actually a pretty well-rounded list. Well, it does cheat a ton of mana, often with Scoundrel and Shadow Stepping, of course, the mini. This deck usually doesn't really win by yeah, doing an OTK or anything, unless you get very lucky with your Fyrakk. But just a more well-rounded, like a tempo deck with a bunch of late game with the Marin and Fyrakk. So if you're more into tempo decks that just play good stuff every turn of the game, then that might be the deck for you. And then as the Druid deck, we have another Outlaunius deck, because yeah, it's still pretty good. No longer running low, of course, since the last patch where it's got nerfed, but yeah, just the old build basically, and yeah, it's still very strong. I mean, Metersil's pretty busted. It's crazy this still hasn't been nerfed. Yeah, just good at stalling, right? And then eventually it always wins Outlaunius. The one big difference, though, I guess, compared to what was before, is the Elise. Because you want to always go for the 1 mana Elise card and then try and get the copy for Outlaunius, because yeah, that does basically infinite damage. Or get spell damage, so you basically have a 1 mana Magical Dollhouse, which was pretty good. So you get like a 3rd Dollhouse, so that can be really strong with Elise. And then it's running Zilliax to stay alive, but yeah, most importantly, I think, to actually enable that Elise. And then here we have the Protoss Priest, and yeah, this deck is still doing well, though not as broken as maybe the play rate might make you think it is, but yeah, still a very strong deck, especially if you get that Sentry early, right, and get the Resuscitate, and then get very early Motherships for almost no mana. And also this deck is running the Umbra, and yeah, you run that to get, hopefully, well, if you play this deck right, more Protoss minions of it, though. Yeah, one game when I faced this deck, The Umbra did 5 times the Sentry, even though there was already minus like 14 mana on the Protoss card, so that can happen. But yeah, generally, yeah, the Umbra is just like another mothership, which is pretty good because that is really your win con in the late game of this deck. And the Paladin deck here we have is the Quest Paladin. You know the deck, right? As before, just play Murlocs and play more Murlocs and then even play more Murlocs, and they keep growing and growing. Now the one difference here in this list, I'd say, is the Anacrotos. The stats look pretty good on the decks that were running this, and yeah, it might look a bit off, but you can draw it, of course, with the Dragon Tamer. But it's also like the only way you might be able to reset the board. Often, right? Yeah, if you fall behind with this deck, there aren't too many ways to come back. You have some rushers, but you might not always have those, or you don't really want to kill the minions, right, against like Arcanite Defense Crystals. So you can play this one then, just to reset the board the next turn. Fill the board with your big Murlocs and then kill the opponent before those minions come back. So that's the idea behind this card. And here we have the Mech Warrior. And yeah, this deck also pretty good at climbing. Just really good at scamming those early minions. You either can go part Scrapper into a testing dummy. Although often I feel like depending on the matchup, right, you might want to save it for like a Cubicle because that's insanely powerful, or for the weapon. Also, you can cheat out the Tortola with the Chemical Spill. And yeah, a lot of aggro decks, those decks you saw at the beginning, right? Once you cheat out the Tortola early, yeah, they just have no way of dealing with it. They just can't deal with it. So that's going to be pretty funny. Also, I got slower decks maybe that just choose to ignore it. You got a Crazed Alchemist here. So yeah, if you play Tortola early, turn 4, you know, turn 5, and they don't deal with it, you can Crazed Alchemist, deal 25 damage to the face. And yeah, generally with all the testing damage you got in this deck, dealing 25 is basically winning the game. And then we have a bit of a weird list here, but it was doing pretty well on the stats. So I haven't really seen it yet on ladder, but we kind of have to trust the stats here, right? But there's the big Spell Mage, and it's running the Tsunami, the Huddle Up to cheat us out with either Portal Mancer or King Tide. And besides that, it's running a bunch of early game, right? A bunch of card generation, so you can actually swap the spells with the Skyla to get a cheap Tsunami or Huddle Up. And then also a lot of burst with it, right? Stellar Balance, that's 8 damage. We got the Fireballs for 6 damage. And the weapon is 6 damage, and then some early game, right? They can also push the damage on top of yeah, those big spells, and then yeah, you can win the game pretty fast with this deck. And then we have the Armor Demon Hunter, and yeah, this is still pretty good to climb with, though maybe a bit slow, but it does win a lot of games. And yeah, it's just obviously all built around the Arcanite Defense Crystal. Get those huge taunts and keep summoning this over and over. Also, again, we have the, like last time, the Cane plus Dissolving Ooze, so you can go like late game, especially against the slower decks. Exodar, probably gain armor or damage if you really need to deal more damage. Depends on the matchup, of course. And then you can eat the huge Starship with the Ooze, and then the next turn you have Cane plus the Ooze and just deal insane amounts of damage. Also, we got stuff like Rest in Peace. So in a lot of matchups you can summon like not the huge Starship, but yeah, just a few taunts in it. So you get a bunch of armor, then you can resummon it with this, and then possibly cube it as well, just to keep gaining those stats. And if you summon it early also, you can get the big Starship back with Felbat instead of the regular Arcanite. Then for the Quest Warrior, we have the Terran Warrior, and I've been doing really well with it myself. I finished top 100 with it, and yeah, I have over 60% win rate over 100 games. And yeah, I think this feels pretty good as the quest deck to play, but you can still play the hydration build, of course. And with cards like Yamato Cannon, don't be afraid to like launch starships in the mid game, unless you play like you know, another Death Knight, another Warrior. Those really slow decks. It's really fine to launch those ships when they're not you know, fully built up. Especially with Yamato Cannon, right? If you need to kill like minions, can be really good to launch it, or just some smaller starship pieces here. And then in the late game, yeah, if you face like a deck that gains 100 health, you can still OTK them actually with this deck. It takes a lot of setup though. So yeah, you need the Time Warp, of course, and then possibly some 0 mana cards. And then often what you can also do is go Exodar for starship pieces, though you need enough space. And then you build 2 big starships, and then you can Raynor plus Time Warp, and then possibly Hero Power Ragnaros, or just the Raynor one. And then yeah, just push so much damage, and that is often enough to win the game. So yeah, don't be afraid that your opponent is like 100 HP. I've won those games. And in other matchups, yeah, just the regular, right? Just try and stay alive. You got the Brawl, Ghoul Brawl, Hostile Invader, and then often you just want to try and stay alive, play the Zilliax, and that usually stabilizes you to win the game. Then another deck I love playing is this Blood, Unholy Death Knight, and it's a bit like a slower mid-range deck where you just keep pumping out threats every turn. And you have the Zera as well, so you can go to 15 mana, and then you can do a whole lot of stuff with the Merit as well. Of course, we have the weapon, the foam render, to push that damage in the slower matchups. This can rack up a lot of damage. And it's also the reason why you don't need Kill Jade in this deck. Usually I actually beat the Kill Jade index with this because you just have the damage to kill him. And usually, those demons that they summon, unless it's the Rush Lifesteal one, doesn't really help them survive too much. You have enough control tools late game to deal with the board for a few turns, and then you just win the game with the weapon and possibly with the random legendaries from the Marin. And also one thing I want to mention before we go to the next deck is that Elise, what you can do in the slower matchup is go Elise for a 10 mana card and then try and get copy plus the attack buff, because that means with just your hero power, you can hero power, right? Copy that, and then you can have with the attack buff, you have 23 damage, and you can do that 3 times. So that is 69 damage, so that's a really nice amount of damage to get. And then, that also scales with any other damage you got. So that's often I've also won the late game matchup, just insane amounts of damage that that location can do. Then for Shaman, we have the Nebula Shaman, and this is a bit of a different build, but it was doing slightly better in the stats, and it's running the Wish Upon a Star. And then ideally, of course, you play with either Nabundo or the Hagatha and then Shadow Block it if you have a lot of time, though usually that doesn't happen. And then you have the Alec here as the 8-drop, so you actually make Elise work. But also because, this can be a huge buff. I mean, we've got the Turbulence, we've got the Flight of the Firehawk, and then the Wish Upon a Star, so it's really easy to make that Alec here do a ton of damage. And besides that, you also have a lot of other synergies, right, with all those buffs you got, because you have the Bumbling Bow up, which doubles up on stats, a little bit like Handbuff Hunter. We got the Aggro Paladin that has 2 minions that double up on stats. So lots of ways to get a lot of stats on the board. And then, of course, the Hex actually can be pretty good in a lot of matchups, right, against the Protoss Priest. So Hex actually the 2-drop. And Mech Warrior to just get rid of the Big Mech, the testing dummy. And the last deck we have here is the quest Warlock, and as you can see, you want to be very fast in this deck because that's what you need to do with that quest. So a lot of 1-drops that try and hit Solarium, of course, because that's the best card to quickly complete your quest with. Also, we got the Clumsy Steward, which actually helps you and disrupts the opponent potentially, so that's nice. And just a tons of damage, like I said. There's the Corpsicle, so just 3 damage or 6 damage every turn. The Horizon's Edge, 30 damage total, and then of course the quest, which can get you a charger every turn. So lots of ways to do damage with this, and just a very aggressive deck, and often you can complete the quest turn 5 with this and play it, and then that often wins the game, just getting those rushers, taunts, or chargers that early. And those are all the decks for today. Now let me know in the comments what you've been having success with on ladder, especially if the deck wasn't on this list. Now, hope the video was helpful. If it was, make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and until next time.